Well, hey folks, it's your old pal, King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Much as in real life, in Rift's Earth, the lands of Argentina are often kind of off people's map and disregarded. When in fact, they're easily one of the top three remaining areas on the planet that still have a large, primarily human population that has not been conquered and ruled by non-humans, largely is in control of their own affairs, uh, and has maintained their technology and still some degree of their original cultural identity from pre-cataclysm days. In the Rift setting, Argentina is chopped up into the Silver River republics, which are about four or five little democratic kingdoms, you could say. They all call themselves republics, but they each have their own little kind of quirk going on. They're not a unified land by any stretch. You could, in many ways, call the Silver River republics in Argentina kind of like a analog to the Domain of Man area in the Midwestern old United States and Eastern Canada. Um, they have a lot of things in common. Technology levels are about the same. In the middle of it is a large human fascist state that's increasingly becoming more paranoid and belligerent and making saber rattling kind of crap about going to war with their neighbors. Uh, you have a republic of mutant animals. You got a republic that's a mixture of survivors of the cataclysm who maintain their technology, but have also allowed the adoption of the use of magic and allowing DBs to have citizenship and be able to join the government. There's a republic that's largely controlled by an alien race that has humans living amongst them, but the aliens are the dominant ones. You have little tiny magic kingdoms. You have roaming barbarians of the plains. Argentina is mostly a temperate, climate similar to the United States and Canada in many ways. Most people have this image of South America as being just all jungle and Mardi Gras parties, and that might be true of Brazil. But in Rift's Earth, Brazil is kind of gone as it once was, and Argentina was lucky enough to have been spared a good chunk of the kind of just essential just breaking of the continent's plate itself that happened to the north of it in the jungle areas. But it is past the tropics, and it actually is a fairly lengthwise a tall country, in terms of its longitudinal spread kind of a thing. You look at it on a map, it might seem kind of narrow in the hips, but it's got a pretty good amount of height. So even within its range, at the very northernmost part of Argentina, it's still fairly. It's like southern Texas, northern Mexico, kind of subtropics, and spreading all the way up into like near Arctic, subarctic kind of conditions by the time you get all the way down to the tip. I mean, as in the real world, in Rift's Earth, it is also amongst the most southerly locations that is inhabited on the entire planet. Up until at least we get to find out what's going on with Rift's Antarctica if and when it ever comes out. So the basic core four of your Silver River Republics, the main ones, the ones that have the most information on them in detail in the books that you can read about, are Santiago, Cordoba, Achilles, and New Babylon. Cordoba and Santiago kind of have common origins. Santiago and Rift's Earth is not based out of the Santiago in Chile. This is originates around a much smaller city named Santiago that was a little bit north of the city of Cordoba. When the rifts came, as I was saying, the Argentina area wasn't as physically devastated. Some of the coastal areas, of course, flooded, and there was the eruption of ley lines and dust clouds and emergence of alien creatures and all the other things that happen all around the planet. But the level of devastation was not quite as bad. The city of Cordoba, while smashed, enough of it was intact that it could be rebuilt, and so you kind of had the beginnings of rebuilt human civilization there pretty quickly after the cataclysm came and passed. Buenos Aires and most of the coastal cities were pretty much wiped off the map and all that, but as is to be expected when your ocean has suddenly risen because you dropped a whole continent into the middle of the North Atlantic. But once again, because of the way South America is shaped, Brazil kind of absorbed the bulk of the impact of those events too. Santiago and Cordoba have, started off friendly with each other, slightly different approaches to government. Both style themselves as democratic republics. Santiago is more genuine about that. It has like a two-branch government with an executive and a senate. Cordoba, on the other hand, styles itself as a republic and having a president, but it's a president for life position that's been handed off from father to son to daughter to father kind of stuff. Over the centuries, 300 years since the cataclysm in the setting. And their government's basically run by a bunch of appointed ministers, so it's all very crony, corruption kind of a thing going on. And it's become increasingly human fascist over the years. It's actually, very in line with most coalition beliefs and outlooks. It also has about the same level of technology. They're able to produce cyborgs and robot power armor. They produce glitter boys. They're one of the main production sites in South America for South America's current crop of glitter boys. They even have some variants, some of which are similar to some of the variants that Quebec has developed on their own. In many ways, in some ways, I kind of compare them slightly more to Quebec, but their overall population is just closer to the coalition in general. And they've grown, kind of increasingly tense with their neighbor Santiago. They're still very economically tied together, but Santiago is, as I said, more open to allowing DB races to have citizenship and serve in the government and allowing people to use magic, whereas Cordoba's more uptight and wants the old world back kind of a thing. Which means that even though Colombia is way closer to North America, and the coalition has some sympathies for them, and they've had some amount of ambassadorial exchanges and talk, because of the fact that Colombia has allowed a certain limited amount of DBs and magic use to be permitted, largely so they can produce their anti-monsters, which they need to be able to keep themselves from being overrun by vampire hordes to the west. That kind of gives the coalition a little bit of a pause of getting too buddy-buddy with them. But they do have some extremely distant ambassadorial exchange with Cordoba, and they're very much on the same page. They like each other. The emperor of the coalition, Prozac, has regular communications with Cordoba's president for life, Borgia. But the sheer distance, Rift's Earth is not a planet where, regularly scheduled air flight is safe or can really be done. There's no satellite communications. There's no way, you can't maintain a radio exchange transmitter network on the ground because of just how chaotic things are across various regions. And even travel by boats across that length of a distance from one hemisphere into the other, carries a whole host of problems of the various kinds of freak accidents of nature and various creatures and pirates and alien beings that you can encounter on the ocean waves of Rift's Earth. Limit their ability to really become strong allies. But they do know about each other and they do talk. Santiago's a good starting place for player characters for an Argentina-based campaign. Both, like I said, both Santiago and Cordoba do have a lot in common. Santiago has some population of DBs, but is still primarily human. Around the main core cities, things are a bit more firmly under control, but much like, you find in parts of North America, even the places where the coalition controls, you get far enough out to the cities, even though they might technically claim a certain chunk of land as part of their overall military domain, there is no border, there's no roads, there's no cops, there's little in the way of law and order aside from what is self-enforced or what can be brought out from the cities to deal with particular situations. But, monsters and aliens and all sorts of stuff easily crisscross the lands. The more out further from the cities, a thing that's common throughout Argentina are the presence of caudillos, which are little small independent towns, often ruled by kind of a combination rancher noble kind of guy. They all are independent of each other. There's no common organization amongst them, and yet at the same time they do all know each other and talk to each other. Um, I guess kind of reminiscent of like South America's colonial era or that kind of stuff. Um, there's also like the Larhold barbarians. They're mostly concentrated in the south now. I've talked about them in one of my earlier videos that I did about the DBs of South America. You know, they're super robust, barbaric, vaguely orcish, but like even worse kind of DBs that, you know, kind of like a Stone Age kind of mammoth hunter, shamanistic kind of barbarian raiders that are kind of just an ongoing problem for all the various peoples of the Silver River Republics. And kind of a common foe, but that not enough of a foe that can get the Silver River Republics to put aside their differences and like unite in common cause against them. And also in part because the Larhold don't have like any kind of central leadership. They're just a bunch of independent little clans wandering around doing their thing, sometimes even attacking each other. South of Cordoba, around the Gulf of San Matias, is the Kingdom of Achilles. This is a mutant animal nation. The survivors and descendants of Argentina's own genetic mutant animal experimentations, which was at a thing called Project Achilles, which survived the coming of the rifts, and then the survivors were organized by some of the human scientists that have been raising them, and they've started their own little colony, and they've brought in a few DBs here and there, and some humans that are friendly to the cause, but mostly it's been a mutant animal project. They're like quite technologically sophisticated. They get along with Santiago and New Babylon mostly. One of the more curiouser things about them is that they are aware of Lone Star and the mutant animals there, which might imply that, you know, back before the rifts, that the company behind Project Achilles might have had some contact with the secret experiments going on with the U.S. government in Texas that led to, you know, the Lone Star facility, which was then found later and was how the coalition was able to make dog boys. And apparently, mutants from Achilles have been like sneaking up to North America in ships and talking various escaped mutant animals from Lone Star to come back with them to, you know, like their little homeland for mutant animals, which doesn't always work, but they've gotten a few people down. And that's in part what has drawn the coalition's attention that far south, and for them to be able to like have any kind of talk and relationship with Cordoba is because they've been looking for this mutant animal nation in South America that's been coming up there and trying to steal their mutant animals. And so, you know, there's a potential you can have like a coalition strike team from Lone Star. They have like a mutant retrieval squad team in the Lone Star World Book that you could take out of there and plop right into the middle of your Argentina setting just to have a little dash of some coalition, classic conflict pop up in your game, especially, you know, if you wait a little while before you drop it in there. And so the players are kind of just more used to just dealing with Argentinian kind of stuff. South of Achilles is New Babylon. It's the southernmost of the primary core four of the Silver River Republics. It was settled by a alien race, an advanced alien species called the Amaki, which are basically, they look like human statues. Their skin is stone-like, and also all their hair and stuff. They got the nickname Babylon because humans of the region thought they kind of resembled like old statues from, you know, Ur and Babylon and, ancient Mesopotamia with that particular kind of curled beard kind of thing, but carved in stone. So they kind of got that nickname and they decided to run with it. They're not dimensional refugees. Their dimension is doing fine. They are a deliberate settlement, and there's back and forth between the two dimensions in terms of trade. In fact, because of that thing happening, the one human corporation on Rift's Earth that is beginning to become an interdimensional arms dealer of any kind is Italo Industries, which is located in Argentina. It's not Northern Gun or Wilkes in North America. It's not Triax over there in Europe, or any of the Japanese companies that survived when their cities were rifted forward in time. Nope. It's Italo Industries in Argentina that is, the first of Rift's Earth's technological industries that is actually starting to sell product in other dimensions. Hey, good for them. There's also a Southern Federation. There's not a whole lot of detail in the books about it. They don't even mention the city names, but basically south of New Babylon, along the last little bit of coastline, along the eastern coast of South America, down there at the very, very tip, before you get down to like Tierra del Fuego and other places that have been sunk by the rising seas. The Southern Federation was like a trio of cities that were rifted in from different places during the Cataclysm. One of them is like a sophisticated magic city with humans from a fantasy world type thing. That practice advanced magical, techniques and sorceries and all that kind of stuff. An excuse to use pretty much any manner of magic OCCs available in other books. There's a Arcology, which is like a city that's contained within a dome kind of a thing. It's very much what most of the core coalition cities are basically ours. They're small-scale arcologies. A large-scale arcology was rifted in that believes they're from the late 21st century Earth. So at first it seems like they're probably just another city from Rift's Earth's past that had been jumped forward in time. But there's a few differences in how they remember history, and their tech level is higher than it should have been at the end of the 21st century, and so they're theorized to be from an alternate Earth reality that just got pulled through when the rifts emerged on this version of Earth. And the last one is a city that apparently is colonized by humans from Wormwood. Wormwood is probably going to have to be the subject of its own video at some point, because I'm going to end up having to touch upon it a few times, probably in the South America setting, because there's a few things in terms of NPCs or places that I have yet to get to that do derive somewhat from Wormwood. In brief, it's sort of a hell dimension, kind of. Souls don't seem to go there or anything, but it's like the land is like this living stone fleshy kind of stuff. People there, like the only thing you eat is like worms that you summon up out of the ground. It's populated mostly by demons of these various kind of like unique chaos demon horde kind of thing. And the humans there are like this weird mishmash of like people descended from like ancient Earth Crusaders. It's an interesting setting. Like I said, I should probably make a video of it, just getting into that in and of itself. But Wormwoods is a source of actually a good chunk of the dimensional raiders that attack Rift's Earth are from Wormwood, whether they be demonic or human. And so apparently a city of humans from Wormwood can also be found here in the Southern Federation. Aside from having to kind of like they're federated insofar as the mutual protection against the Larhold. But they're still kind of each have their own individual culture and rulership and all that kind of stuff, and they haven't had a chance to become quite as big of a player in the Argentina scene as their neighbors to the north. Most of the oxygen in the room is still sucked up by Santiago, Cordoba, Achilles, and New Babylon. Aside from like other scattered organizations like the Caudillos, there's also the Shining Path, of all things, has actually managed to survive the Rift Cataclysm. So yes, communist revolutionaries are a thing in Rift South America. Most of them are concentrated in the Inca Empire along the west coast. They just kind of naturally transferred over, revolution against the capitalists to revolution against, these gods that would dare rule over man and all that kind of stuff. In Argentina, the bulk of them are to be found in Cordoba, where they kind of are more legitimately, agitate for rebellion to take down the president for life, Borgia, and his regime, and try to make things maybe perhaps a bit more in line with how things go in Santiago. Other little things to mention about Argentina, the southern coast, southwest coast of Argentina, and not swinging up around the coast of Chile, you'll find one of the various aquatic races from Rifts Underseas called the Rurlel that are kind of like eel mermaids, I guess, is a simple way of describing them. The South Atlantic right off their coast has a Devil's Triangle, which is one of the various ocean triangles where ley lines intersect to create a perfect triangle. The Bermuda Triangle off the North American coast is the example that North American audiences would be familiar with. But there's others around the world, and one of which is just off the coast of Argentina. And so sea travel tends to have to hug the coastline for a bit until you get past where Uruguay used to be, basically, as you're heading up north. Or as you're coming down south, that's around the point where you want to get in real close to the coastline and stay to the coastline and not get too far offshore. There, this region does include like the southernmost, like, especially because of Santiago. Santiago, like half of it is the northernmost tip of Argentina, but it also includes some parts of Bolivia and most of Paraguay and a little kind of slice of southern Brazil that, basically, like if the northwest corner is like the kind of like just barely touches up into Bolivian territory, and you cut a diagonal line down to the east coast of South America, its northeastern border comes out just a little bit south on the coast from where Sao Paulo used to be, and then Santiago continues down south, and then kind of loops over, follows some rivers. Cordoba is mostly Argentinian, but also does control that little bit of the coastline that used to be Uruguay. And Achilles, New Babylon, and the Southern Federation are all firmly inside the territories that used to be Argentina before the Cataclysm. Also in the Atlantic, the Not Ill, which are kind of like these cephalopod type aliens, are like the dominant undersea power of that region. So if you're looking also to incorporate the ocean-going aspects of an Argentinian-based campaign, you'll want to do a little reading up on them and come up with ideas of how they might figure into the sort of adventuring opportunities you could be coming up with for players in Rifts Argentina. So that's about it. Tell me in the comments below what you think. Hit like and subscribe, and as always, stay Wasp!